Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. Today the audio might be a little bit stuffy or distracting, whatever you want to call it, but I invite you not to pay attention to that. The reason for it though, if you are curious, is because my microphone is not charged and I have my other microphone sitting in my car, and I just thought to myself, you know what? This is part of the messy action and I'm not going to let that stop me. I said I was going to commit to this morning, and this is the window of time that I've given myself, and so I'm just going to go for it. And I'm going to learn my lesson and also prepare better next time. But this is me doing the work. We're back for episode 2 on the podcast, and this week we're talking about the blame game. It needs to stop. We need to move out of this victim consciousness, because the truth is, in the wise words of Mel Robbins, nobody's coming. Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Nicole, a life and business coach for high-functioning women. I'm a self-proclaimed foodie, content creator, educator, and your new abundance bestie. In my world, we talk about all things to do with elevating your life. I post weekly videos helping the everyday woman embody her highest self, create inner wealth, master her mindset, unlock her femininity, and be an absolute boss in life. I create resources, trainings, and host experiences online and in person in order to help you reconnect to your true self. Not the one you think you need to be, but the you that you were born to be. So you can reclaim your power and amplify your voice to lead, love, and create as a woman. If you like my vibe and you want a little bit more abundance in your life, hit subscribe to be notified whenever I drop a new episode. And be sure to check out the free resources in the description below. I'm going to share with you my experience of reckoning that I had this weekend. And I'm also going to be talking about a simple framework or journaling process that I actually took myself through and continue to take myself through to actually move from this victim mentality all the way through to a place of being able to take control of your story and create a new narrative. And if you're someone who's been helplessly trying to reconnect back to yourself and feeling like you have been doing all of these things, self-development, spiritual exploration, yet you feel like no progress is really happening and your goal is to really just come back home to yourself, you know, that feeling where you know yourself, then this episode is definitely going to be for you. As I was writing the notes for this, I was thinking to myself, what is my goal here? And it really was to be able to help you overcome and be aware of your victim stories, because our victim stories are the reason why we stay in the same narratives for the entirety of our lives. And no matter what actions and effort we take to change our narrative, we don't break out of them unless we break out of our victim mentality. And so my goal is to help give you that step-by-step guide, at least to become aware and to start to pave a way to move out of that current consciousness of victimhood and into creating a narrative that you actually want. So I'm going to start by sharing the story or what happened this weekend that actually led me to creating this exact episode right here. Before I do though, we're going to share our quote of the week or a quote of the episode. And as you know, if you watched my pilot episode, we're doing this by sharing a book or a song or lyrics or just anything that inspired me really. Today, it was when I was playing Tori Kelly's song, Soul's Anthem, It Is Well. I don't know if you know the song. I don't know if you know Tori Kelly. If you do, then you are my OG. We love her. And one of the lyrics to her song is, "There is more to see than with my eyes, but fear sometimes can leave me paralyzed. I realize that I'm not in control, yet it is well with my soul." You guys, a moment for those lyrics. A moment, like beautiful, absolutely beautiful. It just captures the essence of what it means to be human, to experience fear, and to experience this. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps. I'm literally getting goosebumps right now. I love that feeling. There is more to see than with my eyes. It speaks to the part of us that wants to know, even though we don't have the senses to perceive what we cannot really know. There is, if you know anything about life, there is this tangible and intangible element of life. And what our minds want and our egos want so badly is to comprehend and understand what we cannot actually understand materially and mentally. And it speaks to the part of us that is also afraid, so afraid when we are not in love and in safety and in belonging, we feel fear. And this is the human experience. And when we are fearful, that is when we become paralyzed by what the stories we tell ourselves about the world and the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. I believe that paralyzed isn't just to do with the actions we take or don't take. It's also about the identity that we feel trapped in. And I shared a TikTok on my account, I think it was last week, where I talked about the silent killer of our souls. It is the most weirdest thing that we don't talk about or we don't acknowledge as a society, that there is a point of reckoning at which many of us have some level of enlightenment or awakening, where we realize the life that we are living, the identity that we are inhabiting, is not what we are here to be and who we are here to be. We realize this, and yet there is no support or no acknowledgement or tools to set us up through this transition and through that transformation of seeing that we're a version of ourselves that we no longer align to, and then wanting to be something else and not knowing how to get there. Unless you have stumbled upon the coaching space, or perhaps you have a support network through your religious or spiritual community, then you just don't get the keys. You don't get the tools to move from that confusion and this realization of this fragmented self, that I'm not who I'm here to be, and I know there's more to actually accessing that. And that is what I feel so passionate about. And I realized that the key to actually being able to have this support, to actually be able to move from victimhood into a place of basically taking ownership of your life and becoming a creator of your life rather than a victim to the stories that you've believed about it, there needs to be someone or something to guide us. And I believe that there are signals and signs and people. Everything around us is always here to support us. They're always giving us signs, pointing us to where we need to go, but it's the awareness. It's like the ability for us to actually perceive and understand that this is the way forward, or to actually receive the signals to begin with. And that is like our level of consciousness. We can't receive the signs, just like you can't understand if somebody is speaking to you in another language. It's just going to be noise. Until you actually understand and have awareness of what those words and those sounds actually mean, you can only perceive and receive the information when you're at that level. It's literally changing our consciousness. It's becoming aware of a whole new experience of life that is available to us that we probably wouldn't have known unless somebody told us. And so that's what I'm here to do today, to help you become aware of that frequency or of the unknown language that you're basically not able to receive and perceive guidance to, simply because your victim consciousness is the operating baseline and you're operating only from victim consciousness. First of all, I'm going to read you guys that journal entry that I promised every single episode. We're going to read from my journal, and then we're going to dive into what is victim consciousness and all of the things. I'm going to read actually from my screen because I typed this up yesterday. I was doing my journaling on Notion. For a long time, I've been feeling like I'm not really myself. I couldn't pinpoint it or understand why, and despite all of my self-development efforts, it felt like I could not reclaim myself. It felt like I was so far from who I really was and who I'm here to be. And then this weekend, I realized that no amount of effort can cause you to reclaim your lost identity, because effort is about achievement. Reclaiming and reconnecting with your true self is actually about doing less, doing nothing. We have to stop efforting, cease persisting, and instead start relaxing, unveiling, and allowing. The self that is buried underneath can only be discovered, unraveled, revealed, but in its own time and in its own way. The only task we have is to create the right conditions for our souls to bud and bloom. Oh, I'm a poet. I am literally a poet. No, honestly, I love writing. I've always wanted to be a blogger. I've always wanted to write books. And so this part of me is in my own journey. It's starting to come out, and I'm giving her permission to come out. And it's just so fun. I'm coming up with amazing things like this. When I talk about the reckoning that I had this weekend, what it was I have in the last few months been wanting to go to church. I've just felt this part of me feel called back to specifically church. And if you don't know much about my story, I grew up 7 years of my young adulthood life volunteering and serving so much in church ministry. I was a youth leader. I was in the worship team. I was in the operations of the church. I was basically, my heart and soul and blood literally dedicated to the church. And there was a period at which COVID happened that I retreated from ministry. And at the time as well, I was in Bible college. So that's another part of it. I wanted to be a pastoral leader. I was in Bible college doing it. And then I retreated from this space. And for me, this was a really, really messy, chaotic time, because not only was it COVID, it was a time where I actually finally admitted to myself that there was more for me to do in this life than to just work for somebody else and to also stay in this four walls of this church. And this wasn't because people did anything to me. There were some things that I didn't agree with, but I was just here to serve. I was here to do what I was called to do and serve people. And I remember I came to this place where I was like, you know what? I just need a break. And when I retreated, that was a point at which I experienced the most loneliness and isolation I'd ever felt. And I don't think I ever gave myself the permission or even got to experience that true brokenness and the betrayal that I felt when everybody that I once knew and was once so close to me, that I saw all the time, that I poured my heart and soul into, where everybody just kind of disappeared. Call it the COVID isolation thing, or maybe call it the fact that proximity is truly what created those relationships. But whatever it was, all those years of investing my heart and soul in giving, to then make a decision where I was going to take a break and to not be supported, it literally broke me. And my partner can testify to this. There were so many nights where I felt so isolated, so lonely, and I also had so much guilt and shame because I didn't take the time to build other friendships outside of church and ministry, because it was my whole life. And I understood why, because at a point in my life, years earlier, when everything was just falling to crap, my parents were divorcing, my living situation was chaos, I didn't feel any sense of safety or home. Church really gave that to me. And I've never spoken about this, but this weekend, it finally hit me that this was a part of me that I was keeping in the shadow. There was a part of me that was so broken and unhealed because I held this feeling of shame, guilt, and resentment. It felt like I could not belong to anybody anymore, because when I gave everything that I had out of the purest intention, and yet I did not receive any love or support in return. And so I continued from that place when I retreated from church life to build my business. And then I got into the business building journey and I got sucked into the hustle in an unconscious attempt to actually reclaim that sense of belonging and to feel that I was significant, and to also prove to myself and maybe to the world that I had these unfinished degrees. Well, watch me make money. And when I start making money, I start feeling validated and valued. So this weekend, when I came back to church, and I have been going, like I said, for the last 2 months, I was feeling very disconnected in the last 2 months. I would go and just receive whatever I felt like I wanted to receive. Like, I was very picky and I was so judgmental because I was like, oh, red flags, trauma, all these things that I was like, this resembles the things that I hated. And I just became so close-hearted. But again, I just trusted my intuition to go to church again. And I found myself actually realizing my heart was getting softer. And I knew that because I had been undergoing this spiritual journey of not necessarily reconnecting with a religion, but reconnecting with my God self and the God that is the greater divine intelligence of source. I've been on this journey, so I knew where parts of my ego were flaring up and then where parts of my soul were wanting to really speak and move. And so I allowed this, I surrendered, and I kept going. And then just this weekend, I had that moment where I came face to face with this part of me that I'd been keeping in the shadows. This is the premise of why I created this episode, because I was like, damn, I have been living in victimhood over this incident for a long time and I didn't even know it. And that's the thing. So many of us live in victimhood so many seasons of our lives, not realizing that it was one incident, one moment in time, one chapter of life that we have been wounded by, but we've not healed through. And so I want to help you recognize those victim stories by sharing with you some of the victim stories that I came to reflect on when I had this reckoning. And then we'll talk about the steps that you can take to move from that Awareness is always the first step to liberation. You can't move from A to B if you don't even know where A is, and you have to be aware of your current starting point so you can work with that and not work with yourself as if you're starting here. Like, work with yourself where you actually are. Okay, but what is victim consciousness? Victim consciousness is essentially the stories and beliefs, habits that reinforce the narrative that keeps us feeling helpless and unable to truly make a change. It's believing that they are doing it to you, that life is happening against you rather than happening for you, or simply just happening. You see the negative in everything. You see a circumstance happen or unfold, and you make it mean something about yourself, and you make it a cage in which you have to live in, rather than realizing that everything is subjective and your perspective gives you power. Victim consciousness is feeling helpless and powerless to make a change because you feel that there is an oppressor. You feel that somebody holds the keys to your happiness, to your peace, to your joy. And unless that thing or that person does a certain thing or says a certain thing or a circumstance changes in a certain way, then you can't possibly access those things. Victim consciousness is lack of self-accountability and responsibility for your reality. You basically believe that even when you try, it can't change because you don't really get to be the one who decides the change, when the opposite is actually true. And your identity is often safe in the familiar pattern or stories that you are currently living in, and you don't like change or challenge. You resist anything new. You are basically the opposite of a beginner's mind. You struggle to accept that you could be anything other than what you are right now, which includes that you could be bad. And this is the ego at play. If you are trying something new, you hate when you are failing at it. You can't stand the fact that you are bad at something, so you would rather just stick with what you know. This is also a form of victim consciousness. But why do we actually stay in victim state? Like, we know that victim state is not actually helpful to us. Why do we hold on to it though? Well, here's what I believe. When we cling on to our victim stories, it's because they reinforce a part of us that feels true and solidified, especially if this has been your operating state for a long time. Your beliefs essentially make up your identity. Like a building that has scaffolding or its infrastructure, if you let go of your stories, your fear is that you will lose that scaffolding of yourself and you will not know who you are. In other words, you cling onto your stories because it gives you some level of control over who you are and the uncertainty of all that is in this life and what it means to be. If you know who you are, then at least you can have some sense of control. But it's just an illusion because we can't really have control. We are always ever changing. Our emotions are never fixed. Our identity is never fixed. What allows us to believe the illusion that it is fixed is the stories we reinforce. If you don't know who you are, then all of a sudden you are vulnerable, you're identityless, you're insignificant. And if you can't defend a certain story, then what are you here to do and to be? And so much of what we do is to stay significant, to have attention, to be valued, to experience love. That is our great pursuit, to experience love as human beings. But because we are so desperate for this love and we think it is external to us, we cling on to our stories as our identity of who we are. And this clinging on keeps us from experiencing the real love that is self-love and acceptance. And so this episode is really here to help you reclaim self-love and the ability to give yourself what you think you need other people to give yourself, and to recognize that if you want to move out of victim state, you have to actually bring your awareness to where you're unconsciously, unintentionally clinging onto some stories that may not be serving you, at least not anymore. In my reflection, here are some of the things that I realized I was showing up as a victim in. This was triggered by the series of events that I just shared that I didn't even know was there. All the parts of me that were fragmented, all the parts of me that felt like I couldn't be accepted and I was disoriented, insufficient, that I was wrong, that I was unlovable, and that people were always going to abandon me, that serving without conditions would cause me to be taken advantage of. These were some of the stories that I told myself. And so let me just read to you the things that I identified in myself were my victim stories. I'm not taking responsibility for what I say I want. I was constantly, well, I'm going to say I am, because this is my current journey. I am wishing and wanting things to just happen. and not believing in myself to actually succeed, so I don't really actually try. If you want to take your abundance to another level, I want to help you. I'm a life and business coach for women who want to step into their next level by activating wealth from the inside out. To help you take your first step to unlocking true abundance and your aligned potential, I'm giving you free resources, workshops, and masterclasses that you can access on demand right now. Check out www.nicoleconception.co/free-resources to get your hands on it. For more videos like this, check out the other playlists and series I have on this channel, and don't forget to hit subscribe to be notified whenever I drop a new video. And if you're more of the podcast type, check out Freedom in Flow, where I dive even deeper into the concepts that will help you create less hustle and more flow, abundance, and alignment in your life and business. Now, if you're a reader, you'll want to subscribe to my email list for unfiltered, honest, and most importantly, applicable life upgrades. Now, don't be a stranger. Connect with me on Instagram and TikTok and send me a message. I love getting to know you and your story. It's why I do this. Okay, my lovely, that's all for now. I'll see you soon. Signing off, Nicole.